I'm uh, I'm John Bird, Lord Bird of Notting Hill. I've been a crossbench peer for the last 5 years, which means that I volunteered to join the House of Lords, and I volunteered to join, and they chose me as a crossbencher, which means I don't sit under any party. I am one of those persons who comes from the working classes or even the underclasses because I come from crime, violence, poverty, slumness. I was born in Notting Hill to a London Irish Catholic family just after the Second World War. So I'm very, very much one of those persons who, over the last 75 years, because I'm that old, has managed to turn their lives around with the aid of a lot of other people and become a advocate in the House of Lords, not simply to make the poor comfortable, but to end poverty. And I find that most of the activities of the House of Lords and most of the world is obsessed with the emergency of poverty, but not the prevention of it. They get very high involved in working on solving the problem of somebody without food, but then they don't seem to move on. We have, and that is a kind of intellectual problem that we need to face. So I started the big issue, which is a street paper, and it helps to get homeless people out of the streets and getting them into a legal form of money making, so that if they do have habits like drink or drugs, then they're not robbing or prostituting themselves to do it. So it's a kind of crime prevention program, a decriminalizing of the poorest among us. I, by the way, did go to India to start a street paper in India, but I ran into a major problem, and that was there were too many things being sold on the streets already, and I would not be doing anybody any favors by adding another reason for people to operate on the streets, because we need to move beyond the streets, and that's exactly what we've been doing in the 75 countries that we operate in around the world. So anyway, so I have a bill going through Parliament which is called the Well-being of Future Generations Bill, and it's largely about stopping the problems that happens when legislation is passed from being a bill into going on the statute books. And the problem that we have in Britain is about 70% of the time that is spent by Parliament, 70% of that is about the damage and the collateral damage and the actual problems thrown up by poverty. So we have a poverty-driven parliamentary system. We have a parliamentary system, we have a local government system, we have a school system which is driven by poverty. So for instance, if you go to many of the schools in the United Kingdom, there will be on average 37% of the children who will have come out of poverty don't get on very well, and actually when they leave they don't have the skills and the abilities and the social value, the social opportunities to move out of unskilled or semi-skilled work. So, and therefore they occupy the working poor, the people on long-term unemployment. They are people who use the A&E department to drop in, and they fill up our prisons. 90% of, at least 90% of the people who are to be found in our prisons did not do well at school. So the Future Generations Bill is to try and make conscious the way in which we create laws, so that we don't then have to be disentangling laws as we do in the Parliament that we are in at the moment. And we spend an enormous amount of time disentangling the mistakes made by previous governments and previous legislation. So the Future Generations Bill is to in a sense make Parliament grow up, make the process of building bills into law grow up. There are all sorts of things. I'll give you a beautiful example that a Baroness Helena Kennedy, who was a campaigning baroness, a campaigning young barrister from Scotland who was totally committed to the idea of trying to protect the rights of the accused. And what she did, she helped create a number of laws around the rights of the accused. 30 years later, she has to admit that the laws of unintended consequences have come to bite us, because one of the reasons why it's very, very difficult to get a rape case through the courts in Britain, in the United Kingdom, is because of all these laws that she helped put together to protect the rights of the accused. So this is a stumbling block. I mean, only about 3 or 4% of people accused of rape ever get into the courts. And it is one of our biggest social problems, and probably encourages the growth of people doing crimes against largely women. So anyway, so these laws that we're trying to do are laws that look at what is the effect this will have on future generations. So that's the work that I've been doing. When the COVID-19, 15, or was it 19, I forget the number anyway, the COVID hit, what happened to the company that I was running, the big issue, is we had to stop selling papers because we had to remove our vendors from the streets. And with that, we also started to look at another major problem. And that was the fact that there were a lot of people who were going to be coming out at the other end with COVID-19 related poverty. And they would not be able to pay their rent because they'd lost their job or pay their mortgage. So we created something called the Ride Out Recession Alliance. And the alliance was to bring many businesses together. We've got a couple of hundred businesses, and getting them to work together to campaign so that the government doesn't allow people to slip into poverty through homelessness, because homelessness is always 3 times more costly than if you support people to stay at home. But one of the big things we did, and we were unique in this, and the government is now imitating us, is we started to campaign to get upskilling of people who were on furlough, upskilling of people who would be made unemployed, upskilling of people so that they could get a job that would push up the amount of money that they could earn, so that they could, in a sense, move themselves out of being the working poor. Or even, we have a very large hospitality industry, and the wages that hospitality industry are very low. So if we can skill people up, if we can improve the lot of their lives and improve the basis of which they can run their family and run the lives of other, and improve their lives and improve their education and improve their opportunity. We have too many things in the United Kingdom that stop people gathering those skills. I mean, there are some real things that we have to struggle with. Why, for instance, is it that if everybody praises social housing in the United Kingdom, but if you actually do come from a social housing background, you only have about 2% chance of ever getting a highly paid job, and you only have a 2% chance of ever getting to the university or the college or finishing your levels and getting a high school certificate, leaving certificate. Those are some of the really big problems. So therefore, if we want to help people out of poverty, we need to address the fact that a lot of people are in poverty because they didn't do well at school. 37% of children have failed at school. They didn't do well in life. And therefore, if we can skill them up, we can move them on to somewhere else. The last thing I would say, the skilling up is not a class-based thing. It is about all sections of the community. There are people in the United Kingdom now who are on furlough, which will end, who are on some form of support, whether it's social security, which will never fulfill their needs, and they will be just living hand to mouth for the rest of their lives unless we can get them jobs. And the only real way of getting people jobs is to increase the skill base of what they are doing and who they are and how their children get the opportunity passed on to the next generation. So that is the kind of area I'm working on. I am really pleased that Udian has asked me to speak to you today, because I'm a proselytizer and evangelizer for social justice. I'm a proselytizer and evangelizer for social opportunity, social mobility, and I'm also a proselytizer on getting rid of all of the things that stop our children from getting the skills that enables them to get out of poverty or out of need and move up socially and enrich the lives of our countries. Thank you very much.